ESPN.com's host of the In the Gate podcast covering the horse racing game, Barry Abrams, here on the Boardwalk Honda hotline to give us a couple of tips and winners and thoughts on the Belmont, which is in play for a Triple Crown again. Barry, welcome back.
It's been a long time. It's so good to be with you guys. How are you?
We're doing great, and, we've got the chance for the 13th Triple Crown winner, Justify, who so far has looked excellent. He had a sloppy track at the Preakness there. He was able to hold off there. So, do you like Justify tomorrow?
I think he is very vulnerable. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to lose, though I think he might. But he is very vulnerable here because of the schedule. I mean, this will be a sixth race in under 4 months. And he didn't run as a 2-year-old, as we know. First horse in 136 years to win the Derby without running as a 2-year-old. And I just think at some point the bill's got to come due for all of that. And I think in the stretch tomorrow is when that bill is going to start to be paid. There are horses in this race who I think wouldn't have a chance in many other races, but they will here because the race is so long, mile and a half, that it's not always won by the horse with the big, flashy closing kick. Sometimes all you need to be is that grinder type, the type that doesn't get too fast, doesn't get too slow, but just keeps coming like a machine. And there are horses in this race who can do that, like Tenfold and Blended Citizen and Hofburg and Vino Rosso. And I think one of those four is going to, or maybe two of those four, are going to have a lot to say about what happens here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Vino Rosso, Hofburg, Gronkowski's another one, Free Drop Billy. It seems at this distance, those could be some names to watch.
Gronkowski could be 6,000 to 1. He has no chance in this race. But, Chad Brown is the champion trainer. I don't say that just because I'm a New York Jets fan and former season ticket holder. But, I mean, Chad Brown is now training him. The horse was trained in England, owned by an Arab, trained by an Englishman, named for an American football player, but now transferred here to the barn of the champion trainer of the year, who's only had a month or so to work with him. So, I mean, eventually Gronkowski might be a useful horse down the line once Chad Brown really gets to sink his teeth into him. But right now, I mean, this horse is just way over his head.
So, Barry, who are the main threats to Justify's Triple Crown bid? Who should everybody have their eye on as the main threats in this race?
Well, Tenfold, I think, with an extra eighth of a mile would have been in front of Justify at the end of the Preakness. And he didn't run the Kentucky Derby, so yes, it's a 3-week turnaround for him as it is for Justify, but he's a little bit fresher because he didn't run the Derby, and I think he's got a very big chance. I really like Blended Citizen here, who ran and won a race here at Belmont Park the week between the Derby and the Preakness, a race called the Peter Pan. And again, not flashy, the time wasn't wonderful, but he just keeps coming. The problem I have with him is his jockey, who was a guest on our podcast last week, a kid named Kyle Frey, who hasn't run here very much. And, if you haven't run at Belmont Park much, it's so big. The track is much bigger than any other track in North America. And so, it's very easy to misjudge when to start asking your horse for everything he has. It's very easy to ask him too early, because if you start, normally at most tracks, you would start asking your horse for his best at the start of the final turn, which is about 3/8 of a mile from the finish. You do that here, you're an eighth of a mile or more further out, and the horse could run out of gas. So I think Blended Citizen has a big chance. His jockey's got to watch what he's doing.
Barry, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. There's a reason that Belmont is the third of the three in the Triple Crown, because the track itself, the distance, the extra distance. What are some of the unique characteristics about Belmont that don't take place at the other two that makes it so difficult to complete that third leg of the Triple Crown?
Well, a couple of things. Belmont Park is affectionately known, at least the dirt track is, as Big Sandy. It's looser and deeper than many of the others, and it's sometimes very difficult to get your footing, especially coming out of the gate. Bob Baffert experienced that in 2002 with War Emblem, who was going for the Triple Crown. The gate opened, and he basically fell on his face. and that was the end of War Emblem's chance to win the Triple Crown. I don't necessarily predict that to happen to Justify. He's broken well out of the gate in each of his first 5 starts, but if he slips just a little bit, then I think these other riders have the potential to, try to target him and box him in along the rail and not let him get out and get comfortable, and that would certainly make it more difficult for him. Now, one thing in his favor in terms of Belmont Park is that because it's so big, going through the turns is like driving a way compared with a local street. So him going from the rail would have been a disaster if this was the Kentucky Derby with 20 horses bottlenecking into a tight turn. But here, going from the rail, not that big a deal unless he breaks poorly, because the turns are so big and wide that he'll be able to get position with little problem.
Hey, Barry, did the Preakness indicate that Justify may be a tiring horse?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, statistically, his first 4 races were absolutely off the charts brilliant. I mean, even American Pharoah didn't do in those starts what Justify has done. The Preakness statistically was a bit of a regression. And the question is he starting a gradual descent, or was that his bounce, and now he bounces back? I think he's going to run a credible race. I don't think he's going to mail this in, but I think the compressed schedule is going to take its toll on him when he gets to the stretch here on Saturday.
So let's say that Justify's on his game. The best to Justify. Is there any of the challengers? Are they real threats then to challenge him if he's on his game?
Well, no, I mean, his best is better than anyone else's best. I just don't think Justify is going to run his best. I think he's going to run reasonably well. He got over the track pretty well the last couple of days. I was here to see him myself today in person, and he got over the ground pretty well, so I don't think he's going to dislike the surface. I just think he's going to weaken just a little bit.
How about the absence of Audible? Do you think that'll take anything away from Justify's achievement?
Well, I don't think too many people are going to pay attention to that. But, yeah, I mean, the fact that WinStar Farm co-owns both Audible and Justify and Noble Indy, who is running here. Now, this is just me. This is not based on any inside information. But we've been hearing that Audible, who finished 3rd in the Kentucky Derby, won the Florida Derby before that, didn't have quite the energy level he should in preparing for this race. And so WinStar Farm sent him to Kentucky for a full workup. I think that, and this is just me personally, I think that's a smokescreen. I think WinStar Farm felt that Audible could beat Justify, and so they had to concoct an excuse not to run him here. Noble Indy, they don't feel can beat Justify. They're there, he's there to set a little pace for him so that Justify isn't the target, that he has a target to shoot at. Not that Justify will be that far off of the lead, but I don't think they're going to cook each other, because I think the ownership group is going to tell both jockeys, Mike Smith, of course, on Justify, and Javier Castellano on Noble Indy, do not get into a speed duel early in this race. And that's the only reason Justify would have gotten into any kind of a speed duel is that horse. But I don't think that happened.
Hey, Barry Abrams is with us. He's the host of the In the Gate podcast. You can check that out to at ESPN.com to check out more on the Belmont, which is coming up on 97.3 ESPN. So, Barry, if Justify is to accomplish the victory, anything diminished with American Pharoah winning just a couple of years ago?
You know, I've had a lot of people ask me that, and it's a tough question to figure, because on the one hand, I understand the been there, done that philosophy, but at the same time, people who follow horse racing, and even those who don't, know of and celebrate the 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 Triple Crown winners of the 1970s, the Secretariat, Seattle Slew, and Affirmed. Right. And so you can't have it both ways. Either it's a tremendous accomplishment or it isn't. And I think the Triple Crown is really hard to win. So if he does this, I think it's every bit as big a deal as when American Pharoah did.
So we know the big question is, does he have enough gas in the tank? What is your gut feeling? You're up at Belmont Park. What does your gut feeling say in checking out his workouts?
His workouts have been terrific. I mean, again, he worked out here, And last week at Churchill Downs, he did his final official tune-up and ran under a half mile in under 47 seconds, which for a horse with his workload and age and everything else is just fantastic. The question is, did he run the Belmont Stakes last week, or is he running it tomorrow? What's left in the tank?
We shall see. 5 o'clock coverage on 97.3 ESPN. Barry Abrams, In the Gate podcast at ESPN.com. And Barry is at B. Abrams Voice for more on the Belmont. Thank you, Barry.
Thanks so much, sir.